Good afternoon. Thank you very much for your attendance to this venue and to online as well, despite your very busy schedule at the end of the fiscal year. Tokyo is 18 degrees Celsius. It is a little bit warmer without cold, but what is the temperature in your location? We have roughly 300 sign-ups online and participating in the meeting. Once again, I will be serving as the MC today, ecological anchor woman. My name is Ayako Sakurada. Thank you. Now it is time to begin the symposium, and we would like to start symposium titled What's GX-ETS, hosted by Climate Integrate. We have simultaneous interpretation. For those of you who are at this venue, you have the receivers on your seats. Channel 1 is Japanese and Channel 2 is English. If you press the power button, you will be able to select a channel with 1 or 2. For those of you who are joining online, please use the interpretation function of Zoom. At the bottom of the screen, there is a globe mark in the control bar and you can select Japanese or English. The organizer of the symposium is Climate Integrate, and it is an independent climate policy think tank. It marked 5th anniversary this year. Up to now, by presenting and communicating facts and sharing communication with various actors, design narrative, and committed to achieve decarbonization up to now. Recently, the situation surrounding climate change is in confusion globally. There is headwind against climate change, as well as war, inflation. Many difficulties stand in the way. However, the severity of climate change is increasing. We cannot relax our countermeasures. The theme of today's symposium is we will have the Japanese version of emission trading system, which will have the full-scale launch in April. ETS is an important instrument to promote countermeasures against the climate change, and it is a mechanism to price carbon. How will it contribute to the countermeasures against climate change by enterprises? We would like to deepen the understanding while we listen to the views from the experts. Prior to the symposium at Climate Integrate at the beginning of this month, under the title of GX-ETS, report was published at today's symposium. Based on this report, we would like to study together and create this an opportunity to discuss together. Upon opening, let me inform you the housekeeping information. As for the Wi-Fi in this room, you have the QR code in front of you and the password is on that piece of paper. As for Wi-Fi, we have the password on paper, so please use that password. It's also on the screen as well. There is a QR code on the screen as well. The materials today are prepared in both Japanese and English, either on the screen or on the paper in front of you. Please make sure to download using the QR code. They are also uploaded on the website of Climate Integrate. You may be able to download from the site as well. During the symposium, we will be entertaining questions both online and face-to-face, and they will be responded in part 2. Please ask your question through Slido, through QR code, and you may be able to enter from the website of Slido using the access code. In the interest of time, we will prioritize on questions with most likes. And if there are questions which are ethic, then please make sure to post likes. So at that time, please make sure that we will have the questions. Now let us get into the program. In part 1 on GX-ETS, we would like to have the lectures from 3 speakers from different positions. The speakers' profiles are available either on the screen or website. Now, first and foremost, from Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, Deputy Director, Environmental Economy Division GX Group, Mr. Masaharu Ohara will speak about the overview of GX-ETS. Due to the diet sessions, he will be joining online. The floor is yours.
The slides will be shared by Mr. Ohara. Please start whenever you're ready. Ohara speaking. I hope you can hear me. Yes, we can hear you fine. Sorry, I cannot share my screen. So can you share it on our behalf? So we would like to ask our secretariat to share his slides. Ohara-san, please wait. Thank you for your time. These slides from Mr. Ohara can be accessed via a QR code as well as the web page from Climate Integrates. So please refer to the material at your own timing. The Secretariat is preparing to share the slides. If it is not possible, then please view Ohara-san's slides on your own device. And those of you online and those of you on site, do please confirm Ohara-san's material. Climate Integrate a web page, or from QR code, you will be able to see his slides. In the interest of time, the slides will be up in a minute. Thank you for waiting. Sorry, we're still trying. Ohara-san has created very detailed material for us. I'm sure you'll be able to see it on your own device as well. Please access from Climate Integrate webpage as well as from the QR code. They are provided both in English and Japanese. Ohara-san, do you have your slides in front of you? Yes. We may require a bit more time, so can we start? For the viewers and for the audience, please view Ohara-san's slides from our webpage as well as from QR code. And if possible, we will share the slides when we can. So Ohara-san, please, can you start? Thank you very much. My name is Ohara from the Environmental Economy Office from GX Group, METI. And very sorry we were not able to show these slides. I would like to explain very simply. Ohara-san, thank you for waiting. I think we've been able to show our slides. Thank you very much. Thank you. So please move to page 2 of the material. So once again, the GX positioning to reconfirm that in Japan. Now, for Japan's GX is based on simultaneously achieve stable energy supply, economic growth, and decarbonization. And the trends around the world are changing concerning decarbonization. So strengthening domestic industrial competitiveness and national security is a prerequisite, especially Japan's energy self-sufficiency rate is low. So with the recent, not only Russia-Ukraine war, but with the Middle East situation as well, we need to stop overly relying on fossil fuel. So GX is required, and we have recognized that. Page 3. This is concerning carbon pricing. A recap of that. From 2022 for 10 years, 150 trillion yen of public-private GX investment is aimed at. And there are some already underway, about 20 trillion leading investment as well as carbon pricing. From April, we will start this ETS program, plus the fossil fuel levy. So these two will be included in terms of carbon pricing, but it's not going to be done all of a sudden. So we will need to make an announcement that this will start, so the companies will carry out their GX activities. So we'd like to have some grace period to allow for that, and we will introduce this. And in terms of pricing, it will be gradually increased. So this will be announced in advance. So the later you are, the more burden. So we do hope that you will start investment at an early stage, and we plan to encourage that. And also concerning the emission trading system. So this is to cost efficiently carry out emissions reduction. So there has been company-based efforts as well in the past, and by each company, the reduction cost may be high or low, depending on the company. So through this kind of mechanism, to make this more efficient is the aim. So from our side, from the government, there will be some rules. There will be something like a emission target. These will be allocated. And the companies will be calculating their own emission volume. And so they will be able to prepare the same amount of emission reduction according to the allocated amount. So there may be ups and downs, because these will be allocated. So if there are excesses or shortages, these can be traded in the market. And from April next year, from fiscal next year, this will start. And until now, we have been doing this gradually already. In 2020, from fiscal 2023, on a voluntary basis, GX League, within this voluntary framework, trial system has been conducted. And from 2026, this will be officially launched. And the allocation will be done by the government. It will be free of charge, and then the ups and downs will be traded by 2030. From 2033, for the power sector, it will not be free allocation. It will be auction based, so it will be paid allocation. So that is how we would like to start. So this is other countries. So China, Korea, East Asia ETS already has been introduced, and this level will be increased going forward. That is the policy, and ASEAN as well. There are some countries who have already started, and there are countries who are planning to start. So this is concerning the overall picture of the ETS system. So who will be within the scope? In Japan, CO2 direct emissions will be looked at, and more than 100,000 tons per year. That's average per year. So these will be corporations with direct CO2 emissions of over 100,000 tons. So for these companies, fiscal 2030, this includes both direct and indirect targets. So in the mid to long run, how this can be reduced, there will be a transition plan. And this needs to be reported to the government, and the necessary information will be disclosed. And concerning the emission allowance, as mentioned earlier, this will be allocated by the government, and the companies will be calculating their reduction, so the excess and shortage will be adjusted. But if there's a shortage, at the deadline time, there will be a penalty. And this will be explained later on as well. When trading, there will be a cap at the upper limit and lower limit to stabilize price. And how the government will be allocating the allowance. The Minister of METI will have issued guidelines concerning the allocation. Mainly, there will be benchmarking by industry or comparison against the previous year, so grandfathering a reduction over the previous year. These will be the two standards. And not only that, there are other key considerations for companies. So reduction efforts before the system is introduced will be taken into consideration. And overseas, if the CO2 emission is high, there is a leakage risk. And concerning 2050, there is still more GX R&D that is required. So companies that are doing these kinds of GX related R&D and the changes in the world and new factories are being built, or rather there may be closure of facilities. So the changes in activities levels, all of these will be taken into consideration. Now, benchmarking and grandfathering in more detail is shown on this slide. So benchmarking, it is by industry. For the particular industry, the companies in this industry, it is the reduction of emission by product. And by comparing, you'll be able to rank the companies where the emission intensity is high or low, and there will be a certain level that will be established. So there will be gradual reduction from that, and that needs to be demonstrated to improve intensity. So there will be initiative and investment to allow for that. That is the benchmarking. And basically, comparing against the previous year, rather than saying how much percent should be reduced. So if there are companies that have already achieved this within the same industry, then we would like to encourage other companies within the same industry to make efforts to reach that level. But there are companies where benchmarking might be quite difficult. So for those companies, increasing a reduction per year, that is the grandfathering standard, and that can be used. And the following page shows benchmark industries. And there are 20 industries that will be specified. Iron, chemicals, pulp, cement, energy-intensive companies, plus automotive and power and transportation. So inclusive of all of these, 20 industries have been specified. And concerning the companies of GHG, if the country is 100, so 60% of the GHG emission will be from these companies, and 90% will be benchmarked. So the remaining 10% will be grandfathered. The upper limit and lower limit price. So as I just explained, based on the rules of allocation of the allowance, depending on the company, there will be surplus and there will be shortage, and that will be traded. And the trading exchange will be established going forward. So the trading price, if it's too high, and then that will have a major burden on the management of the company. But if it's too low, no measures need to be taken. So if companies just pay a small amount, their obligations will be fulfilled. So decarbonization investment will not progress. And therefore, we will be setting upper limit and lower limit. And the pricing will be set so that will enhance the predictability of trading for the companies. And within that range, they will be able to predict their profitability as well. So that is what we are expecting here. This is my last page. The upper and lower limit prices from fiscal 2026, these will be established. But the concept behind this is the upper limit. Well, the measures that can be taken in the coming 5 years, when we think of that, then with fuel conversion from coal to gas conversion, that is something that can be done from now within the coming 5 years. So we had that kind of discussion. The fuel conversion cost was taken into consideration, and we have set the price of 4,300 yen. The lower limit in Japan, the energy reduction cost. There is energy rationale. There is the economic rationale here as well, and there we already have much experience. And so J credit price we have referred to. So energy saving at least need to be done, and that is what we said as 1,700 yen per ton for the lower limit price. This is fiscal 26. 4,300 yen is the upper limit, and 1,700 yen is the lower limit. And for the next 5 years, this will be the forecast. So how this will grow, this is not fixed because the price increase will be included as well, and therefore the inflation will be taken into consideration, and that the expected range is shown on the bottom. So this is the system that we would like to start so that we can contribute to the emissions reduction in Japan. Very sorry for the trouble at the outset. That is all for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ohara, for your presentation. Although the time was limited, you just focused on the key highlights. Thank you very much for the detailed explanation. Thank you very much for joining despite your very busy schedule. Due to the official duties, Mr. Ohara will leave now. Now, moving on to the next speaker, who has joined as a member for the system design of a GX-ETS. From the professor of Waseda University, Professor Toshihide Arimura will speak on the title of features and significance of GX-ETS. The floor is yours. Thank you. My name is Arimura from Waseda University. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. I see some familiar faces, and thank you very much for joining. I will talk about key features and significance, and that was requested. And the challenges will be explained by Ms. Hirata, so I will be speaking from that position. Those of you who are on site and online, I am sure that you know what carbon pricing is all about, so let me skip this page. On the part that Mr. Ohara explained, there are some overlaps, but I would like to speak about the significance in addition to his explanation. The features of Japan's carbon pricing. We had GX economy transition bonds in the first place, and we approached the enterprises. This is one of the features. So in terms of carrot or stick, normally the other countries started from sticks, but Japan started from carrots, and the sticks followed. And that is a major feature. Personally, actually, in the Council of the Ministry of Environment, I was involved from around 2010, and I know the difficulty of the system itself. So more recently, in the past 1 to 2 years, The attitude of the U.S. administration, I was concerned about that, and I'm concerned about whether this will be managed. And against that headwind, this is now trying to make progress. So this is a major shift at the moment. So GX-ETS phase 2 will finally begin from this April. The significance of a phase 1 is that this is basically on voluntary basis. So this does not function as the emission trading system, but from the administrative point of view, both the administrative side and the company side have been able to learn and obtain information. So this phase 1 was leveraged in a good manner. By company, this will be implemented, but the GX-ETS does not have the constraint by industry. So power and the manufacturing sector, not to mention them, but the logistics and a domestic aviation industry will be included. And for logistics, we will be early, even compared to EU ETS. So depending on industries, we have new approach. So in comparison with EU offset, number 4 offset, we have this scheme. So this has higher flexibility. And in the interest of time, I did not prepare a slide, but J credit is up to 10%, and JCM, the bilateral credit, can be used up to 10%. And this has the chances of delivering business opportunities. And if you go to regions, they have many forest related resources, and they are trying to absorb CO2, and at the same time, they can gain a revenue. So we're expecting that this can activate regions. And as was mentioned earlier, the price ceiling and the price floors are set, and these are other features of this scheme. In EU, as you know, they are controlling a volume in order to control a price. But Japan is presenting the minimum price in order to manage the system. That is the major feature. And now, looking at the features and significance, as you know, it's been 15 years since the EU started the scheme, and we are the latecomer. Many countries are trying different schemes. Actually, based on the other countries' experiences, we take the advantages and disadvantages, and this was designed in short period of time. So I think this was a credit for the government. I spoke about this to my colleague researcher in Australia, and very astonished to hear the situation. Under such circumstances, we are leveraging the experiences from the energy conservation law. Personally, for over 20 years, I have been advocating that we need to implement this carbon pricing because we have Energy Conservation Act, and using the framework of an Energy Conservation Act, this system is based on this. So I became the chair of this benchmark. There are many technological challenges, and I did work this with the previous speaker, Mr. Ohara, and we did have difficulties that we need to overcome. So what we can say is that this is a bottom-up type, and this is completely different from the cap system that EU has. This is based on the technologies that the Japanese companies have to set the level. That is the major feature. And just like the other countries, we have carbon leakage measures. I will mention this later. And the consideration for R&D is quite unique for Japan. When we explain this to overseas, they say that this is interesting, and they also react in that way. From 2010, I serve as a member. When the companies work on emission measures, there are many people who say that they will lose the source for innovation. So this is a consideration for that. And as a significance, there will be promotion of energy conservation, and there will be promotion of a new technology for the existing technologies, and there's also fuel conversion. natural gas usage from heavy oil, there will be shift to natural gas. That is expected. Now, because of the crisis in the Middle East, there may be challenge that the price would soar for natural gas. We see the price increase in every fossil fuel. For power industry, the allocation is different compared to the other industries. There will be presentation on that, but there will be certain level of impact to the power sector. Also, the possibility for industrial consolidation. This may be the case in mid to long term. If the price is high enough, insufficient companies may have the impact in many respects. That is the expectation of mid to long run. Earlier, Mr. Ohara provided explanation, so I would like to skip this part. And what is expected with this allocation is an addition to what Mr. Ohara from METI explained. In principle, this is by company, and we will start from the top 50% of the benchmark, and we will try to reduce that gradually. Over 5 years, we will reduce to 32.5%. Rather than making extra effort by those who are making effort, as you can see on the right, those with less efficiency will be motivated to work hard. There were no penalties at the time of the Energy Conservation Act, but now they need to purchase or to make the investment for energy conservation. That is being expected in every industry. Personally, I am also a member of the ETS in Tokyo, and also I do the business evaluation, and the findings was that there is a penetration of the energy conservation technology in Tokyo as a result of the survey. As you know, in Tokyo, it is targeted for office buildings. In office buildings, what is the level of energy conservation technology? We did survey on a nationwide basis, and the blue represents Tokyo, yellow is other regions. As you can see, in Tokyo, there is higher energy conservation technology introduced. So with ETS, we see the promotion of energy conservation technology with this GX-ETS. We can expect to see the penetration of the technology, and there will be more business opportunities for such technology providers. In principle, from 50% level to 32.5%, the benchmark is declining, but the power sector is slightly different. By fuel type, a benchmark is allocated that will start from 3 years, and from the 4th year, from 2029, there will be all thermal that will be introduced in 2029. It's a 20%, 2030 will be 40%, so gradually it will shift to all thermal average. So as a result, what will occur in 2026, coal, thermal, and natural gas. Coal is much higher in terms of the allocation, but when it becomes 2030, this percentage for coal is 60% and natural gas is 60%. So the allocation to coal is now getting smaller, and the natural gas will be able to have more with all thermal. So there will be more opportunity cost for continuing to use fossil fuel, and we're expecting to see the shift in power mix. Now, I will skip grandfathering because there was explanation already. Personally, in economics, on carbon leakage, what would be the best method to respond? I'm actually researching that, and output-based allocation. based on emission, I believe will be the good option, and you will be able to see the emission on the vertical, and you see the green part with the free allocation. If the output increases, then this allocation can increase gradually. So with the measures against the carbon leakage, CO2 reduction can be promoted. So from the past, I have been working on this kind of economic analysis. This is CBAM that is being done by EU to explain Japan's leakage, and output-based allocation that I mentioned earlier is compared and analyzed according to the economic model in steel industry. When we look at the impact of carbon pricing, if we do not take any measure, the production will decrease, and there's almost no effect even if there is a CBAM. And if there is export refunds, there will be difficulty with WTO. So we are now trying to mitigate this. And in this GX-ETS leakage measure, against the industries who will be able to fulfill this against the previous year, if there is a higher percentage of the emission, certain level will be purchased by companies, but for the remainder, 50% allowance will be allocated. So from economic point of view, the leakage measure is already taken. Furthermore, consideration for R&D against the allowance, the emission is increasing in companies, and among such companies, if they are working on GX-related R&D, then a certain amount of the shortage can be granted. This is unique to Japan, and this can be used as an appeal of the Japanese system. Now, on pricing, the price setting is the most important part. There are different perspectives, I believe. Having said that, 1,700 yen is the minimum amount. CO2, 1,700 yen. Based on that, the minimum low carbon investment will be made. Also, the price ceiling is 4,300 yen. Fuel conversion is in mind. From the company side, what needs to be paid is this price ceiling so it can be assuring. But on the other hand, if you want to make investment to decarbonization, it's not sufficient. And after 2030, how can this be linked to decarbonization is the major challenge of this system. So in summary, GX-ETS is bottom-up type, and by taking latecomers advantage, this phase 2 was designed in a short period of time. To inefficient performers, we can have the expectation for the reduction of emission. From the international competitiveness perspective, we are also mindful about the carbon leakage. We are also mindful about the innovation and carbon credit, and there are options. The last one is an advisement from Nikkei BP in June. There will be economic analysis of our carbon pricing, and this book will be published. So if you're interested, we hope you will take this book. Thank you very much for your attention.
Arimura-san, thank you very much. From the viewpoint of developer as a committee member, he has introduced the intent and so forth. So concerning leakage, CO2 will be reduced as things develop. Now, next, from Climate Integrate Report, Executive Director Kimiko Hirata from Climate Integrate will be talking about the characteristics of GX-ETS. What's GX-ETS? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As organizer, I would like to thank you all for coming despite your very busy schedules, and thank you all for the online viewers as well. Today's symposium, this What's GX-ETS? With the formulation of this report, we decided to hold this symposium today. As Arimura-san said that he will be talking about the implication and I will be talking about the challenges, but that is not necessarily the case. This system, the more you look at it, it's very complex and it's very difficult to understand. So I think it will be clear if we read this, but what kind of system is it actually? We want to convey this in an easy to understand manner. So that is the objective. So we hope that Arimura-san's book will be sold. And based on that, how should we understand this system? So we would like to organize the various arguments as well related to this. There are unique mechanisms. So when we created this report, what we especially focused on is that what is going to be the effect of reducing GHG? And it is to price carbon. So how does carbon pricing work? And as a result, with this mechanism, what will be the changes that will be brought about here in Japan? So these are the points that we'd like to focus on today. So if you look at the material, and the first page shows the overview of this system. It is a diagram. So please take this into consideration. Ohara-san, Arimura-san has already explained. But concerning this ETS design, there's this beige shaded area. So we need to look at the relationship with the outside world as well. In phase 2, there will be 300 to 400 companies that will be subject to this. Now, about 60% of Japan's GHG emissions come from these companies. That is quite large. And 100,000 tons or more in terms of direct emissions. So these are companies with high emission levels. 60% of these companies by 2030 and also by 2035, whether or not they will be able to steadily reduce emissions, will have a major effect on whether Japan can reduce their emissions to the targeted level. They will be playing a core role. About the 60%, this is the blue. So the company's coverage, the total cap, the total emission reduction cap is not established. It is a bottom-up approach. That is the Japanese unique feature. So by company, whether it's the allocation will be done either by benchmarking or grandfathering, as you can see in the blue. So the emissions allowance for a company's next year level will be established. So, and it was it's by industry. So the reduction of the 400 companies, we don't know until we actually start to what extent the emission reduction will be. This is one major unique feature because it cannot be understood from the initial start. There may be people who have questions in terms of the emission results. Is it viable? And concerning benchmarking, it is very detailed. I would like to talk about this later. So with this system, what measures do companies need to take? So there will be free allocation of the emission allowance first. So it is something like a certificate. So to receive the emission allocation, there is no cost. It is allocated free of charge. So the cost will not be incurred immediately, but voluntarily, in order to reduce the emission, the companies will need to incur cost, or maybe not. But first, they need to make their own efforts to reduce. And not only that, the upper price, lower price, maybe trading would be more efficient. So if that is the case, trading is possible. So buying and selling, it will be possible according to the system. And furthermore, trading between companies, in that case, it is just which company will be using the allowance, so it will not lead to using further emission. But if external credit is used or overseas contribution is going to be used, then there will be there needs to be the efforts by other companies that will be reflected, and then the companies will be able to increase their emissions. So the companies overall, to what extent they will be using this is going to be a key point. So this is the overview that has been illustrated. So what we are interested in here is the relationship with the reduction. That is not clear. So what I just explained is phase 2. In terms of pricing, I will talk about this later, but it's free allocation. And by company or by industry, there are various benchmarkings and considerations. And there's the cap and floor in terms of pricing. It is quite low. So the reduction incentive at the start may be quite weak. And this probably is our main topic today. Phase 1, that is voluntary. Then until phase 3, we will progress to phase 3. And phase 3, not everything is decided. So the scope and the design and external credits, whether they can be used or not, those are not yet decided. But there are some things that already have been decided. The power generation sector, for them it will be paid. And so they need to pay and purchase through auction. But the other will be free allocation. We don't know whether or not there will be emission cap. This is 7 years in the future, so far out. And then there is going to be income, so revenue. So these are specified business operator contribution. This is outside of the ETS scope. But there is a leading investment with GX bonds. So this is going to be a source of funds to repay that. But this is not only for the paid allocation in the auction, but this is going to be a burden for the fossil fuel surcharge. So by 2033, in 10 years, GX bonds, that kind of leading investment, this will have to be repaid. So by 2050, all the funds need to be recovered so that the bond can be redeemed. So with ETX, GX, bond, and surcharge, all of these need to be taken into consideration. So it's very complex. That is another feature of the Japanese system. The next page shows what I just explained. And there are some analysis results. First, concerning the CO2 reduction impact, the power generation sector. This is extremely important for the reduction for the entire economy. What is the benchmark here? We already explained earlier. So in the coming 3 years, by fuel, for coal, for gas, there will be benchmark for each fuel type. So the top shows high efficiency, 15%, and the middle is about 50%. So by 2030, 35%. That is where we want to aim. And so that is the target by the government to enhance efficiency. Coal, oil, and gas. The trends differ for all of these. So there will be respective benchmarks for these in 3 years. So coal and gas, 50%, 32%. There's not much difference between the two. So by 2030, by fuel type, not much reduction can be achieved. But from 2029, the coal will be included here as well. So if this is applied to the coal fire plant for JERA and others, if even if their power mix is the same and the generation power volume does not change, then how difficult it will be to make things more efficient. So first, concerning JERA, they mainly use gas, so they will increase emissions by 2030. But for J Power, it's mainly coal, so reduction is required. But J Power, it will be lower than the committed reduction by J Power. So with GX-ETS, when it starts by about 2030, ETS will continue. So whether or not this will lead to further reduction by the companies, whether or not benchmarking is sufficient, these are some questions that have been raised. So that is what I wanted to introduce.
And on volunteer basis, phase 1 progressed, and toward 2050, they are trying to be consistent to NDC, the government goal, and that is incorporated. By 2050, if there is a reduction from 2023 to 2025, there was a mechanism for measurement, but in phase 2, as far as we see, we do not find any system to measure that. In analysis 2, I will talk about a price. This shows the World Bank's state and trends of carbon pricing. Tokyo, Saitama, Japan, Tokyo emission trading, Saitama emission trading, and in the middle you see the carbon tax in Japan, and they are very low in terms of pricing. And this is a mechanism to price carbon, but in phase 2, it's free allocation, and in the form of search, there is a no levy, and there is also a price ceiling. So it's 1,700 yen to 4,300 yen. This is the red line, the current carbon price, and compared to the current level, it is quite low as far as we understand. Now, moving on to phase 3, the auction and the paid allocation, and we are trying to collect such levy and charges to redeem GX transition bond. The one that is going higher is the case, and they are trying to have the cumulative revenue and to repay 20 billion yen, but it's quite a gradual at the beginning, and this is quite a mysterious system, and there is cap. The petroleum coal tax, the revenue becomes less, and also in FI2, FIT, there is a less levy, so we need to make sure to reduce the burden. So unless there is a decrease in levy, we will not be able to recover the total amount. And in later stages, we are to focus on repayment. So this GX transition bond does have the deadline for repayment, and it is expected that there will be shortage and we need to refinance. And that is now visible. And now coming to the carbon price, it has the same mechanism. So at the beginning, it is not possible to incorporate the levies and charges. So at the very beginning, they will be at a very low state. So it's only few hundred yen or 1,000 yen. So net zero, we are targeting for 2030, but we need to have 20,000 yen as the carbon price amongst the advanced countries, but it's very low at the moment. Next is the gasoline tax impact. Now the context is changing, but at the end of the year, there was elimination of the provisional tax rate, and there was a major reduction in the gasoline price, and this may have the negative effect. But when there is levy for the fossil fuel, then there will be reduction and increase. But this levy, what will be the level of increase? When we take a look at that, there will be cap to the increase, and there will be only gradual increase for the time being. So the drop as a result of the elimination of the provisional tax rate will only recover at around the 2050. So far, very briefly, I summarized this mechanism, but this is the future outlook for GX-ETS. This will basically covered by the companies who will account for 60% of the total. So this is positioned as the core system in Japan. So it would be necessary to be developed as a encouragement to the corporate action by the Japanese companies, and it is important to ensure high transparency. On the other hand, how much reduction can we achieve amongst these covered companies? Carbon budget perspective should be incorporated to be aligned with the NDC, and a gradual increase in pricing, and there will be price ceiling. And as an incentive, this will be relatively weak start. So we need to make sure to increase the carbon price. CBAM, I believe the German speaker will join, so we would like to discuss this later on. As we do the international trade, we also need to consider Japanese pricing in the concept of the global market. According to our analysis, in 2040, there is a case of a decarbonization of a power sector in 2040 and 2050. We analyzed both of them, and that is because it is important to decarbonize power sector at an early stage. And please take a look at what the significance is in our report. Another point that we are concerned about is phase 2. We still do not know when this will end, and we do not know when phase 3 will begin. That should be reviewed clearly. There will be gradual increase of carbon price, and there will be higher pricing in the future, or toward 2050, we need to have the repayment of what was used in the past. So we now have the mechanism of invest now and charge later, and we also need to validate whether this is correct. In the end, there should be contribution to decarbonization and advantage and benefits to all stakeholders. So I would like to make sure to monitor the progress of this system. That is all. Thank you very much.
Hirata-san, thank you very much. Concerning GX-ETS from the analysis report, the relationship with reduction and the analysis results have also been introduced. So we have received the overview and the implication as well as challenges from the speakers, and we will now continue on to session 2. So session 1 will end here. We would like to take a 5-minute break, and we will resume at 5 after 3. From 5 after 3, we will start the second part, which is the panel discussion. Those of you online, thank you very much for participating. We will take a 5-minute break. And those of you on site, there are refreshments outside. So let us resume once again at 3:05. So now we'd like to start. And those of you online, we will once again resume part 2. So we would like to start part 2, the panel discussion. The operation of GX-ETS and the measures for climate change going forward. Please, if you have questions, please use the QR code. Within Slido, if there are any likes, to those questions, then these questions may be prioritized. So let us introduce today's panelists. From German Institute for Economic Research, Professor Karsten Neuhoff. He will be participating online from very early morning in Germany. And from the Tokyo Metropolitan Government, Mr. Tsubakino, Director of Emission Cap and Trade System. And from Waseda University, Professor Arimura Toshihide, who also spoke in part 1. And from Climate Integrate Corporate Analyst, Manabe Yuka. And facilitator is Hirata Kimiko, the Executive Director of Climate Integrate. So Hirata-san, the floor is yours. So thank you once again. So in part 1, we talked about GX-ETS. So GX-ETS was explained by each of these speakers, but the perspective is all different depending on the speaker. So maybe that is to deepen your understanding on the system. In part 2, from the European experience, ETS there, and also Tokyo Metropolitan Government ETS. So what were the lessons learned and how it is being actually operated? We would like to hear about that. And then talk about how we develop the GX-ETS going forward. We hope their talk will be a hint for that. So Tsubakino-san and Climate Integrates Manabe-san will also, and Arimura-san will also be participating in the discussion. So first, from online, from German Institute for Economic Research, Professor Karsten Neuhoff. Carbon pricing and the power generation design. He has been deeply involved in this. And what is the EU development? I think he is the best person to hear from. Thank you very much for your time. So I'm sure you must have listened to our explanation of GX-ETS. So how is ETS developing in Europe and what is your view? Please share. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for the invitation, and it's such an exciting time for the developments of the policy in Japan. So let me try to reflect on our experience, and I hope that there are some insights that may be helpful, but very much looking forward to the discussion afterwards as well. I want to talk on 4 elements: on the target definition, on price stability, on the effects of the free allocation, and then on the role of emissions trading in the national policy mix. On the first point, when we started this European emissions trading system in 2005, you can see that at the beginning there was some level of uncertainty as to whether it is credible. Some countries still had to implement the regulation. And so only gradually the carbon price increased. And then we started to reach prices which are now at what is your price cap envisaged right now in the Japanese emissions trading system. What happened in 2006 was that we really had a big drop and ultimately had 0 prices by the end of the first trading period. The main reason for this was that we had a bottom-up allocation system. So EU countries could decide how many allowances they wanted to give to their industry, and everyone wanted to be generous to their industry, and so adding up all the free allocation was more allocation than there were emissions in the European system. By the time this became apparent, the price dropped and was vanished. We then started the second trading period, and you can see that the price decoupled, so the expected price for the second period was different from what we saw in the first, because the European Commission then said, okay, we have to revisit the free allocation plans from the member states. And there was a lot of negotiation between the European Commission in Brussels and member states, where Brussels asked member states, please reduce the allocation you give to your companies. Otherwise, we have no scarcity. Otherwise, the system will not provide an investment framework for our companies in Europe. Since 2012, all the allocations totally top down. So we first determine the target of allowances in the emissions trading system and then break it down how much is auctioned and how much is given for free, make it top down based on that experience. On price stability. We always attempted to set the cap in a way that ensures some level of scarcity while supporting the move towards emission reduction. And when we started 2 decades ago, the focus was more on emissions reductions. I think it is a lot easier, but also different now, where climate neutrality is the big change and the big objective now. And I think climate neutrality has more clarity. It is easier to communicate in the public debate. And it also is far better for our industry because it involves a shift to new technologies and therefore more modernization, more positive perspectives come with it. Nevertheless, looking back at this experience of setting the cap for the initial emission reductions, you can see how uncertain we were in terms of what level of emissions to expect in the future. And I think some colleagues referred earlier on already about, for example, the big uncertainties about how much LNG will be available this year, given the crisis in Iran. When we made these projections, you then can see we had the projections of the emissions, the projections of the cap. In 2005, looking back, it was clear we had far more emissions under the cap than verified emissions. The price dropped to 0. We wanted to avoid the same experience again. Therefore, from 2008, for the second period, one looked at what is the cap, and then in blue, what do we expect? How many offset certificates, CDMs, will come into the system, and then to see if the number of emissions will be below this level, will there be scarcity in the system? We worked a lot on it at that time, and we got it badly wrong, nevertheless. Because it was not only this uncertainty about the emissions, what actually killed this European system by 2011 and 12 was that we got a lot more offsets into the system than we expected at far lower prices. And they effectively drove the prices to less than 10 euro per ton of CO2 by the end of 2012. Hence, there was a lot of discussions, how can we address this in the future? And I think the international experience was one needs to move to a big share of auctioning for price stability purposes. One needs a share of auctions that is big enough that you can reflect in the auction a price floor, such that if the allowance emissions are lower than a certain level, there's still a price in the auctions that sets the price floor. Because the offsets are very difficult to predict what their price will be. And I see that the Japanese system now says, well, we don't do auctions, we buy back the allowances and therefore also guarantee the lower price. I cannot judge on Japan. I only can reflect on this European experience. In Europe, the reason that we have the European emissions trading for the last 20 years, and the reason why it is an important part to guide strategies and give them clarity of companies, is that we have the auction revenues. Governments increasingly require these auction revenues to fund programs to modernize our industry. If we would have to be in a situation where governments would have to pay money to maintain this European emissions trading system, I'm not sure we would still have this European emissions trading system across all the volatility that comes in systems. So this is why auctioning is a very important component to give overall stability to the system and therefore credibility and therefore make it relevant for investments, and also as an opportunity to reflect a price floor in an auction that stabilizes revenues for government rather than incurs costs for government. The second big experience we've had in this first years until 2012 was the experience of windfall profits. There was a big observation that the power sector made a lot of money out of this emissions trading system. How did this happen? You can see here the emissions trading price in purple, and in blue you can see how the spread, how the price above marginal costs of coal power generation in the wholesale markets has increased. And you can see this big correlation. It's just one picture from the time. We did more sophisticated analysis afterwards. And what we did observe is that the carbon prices were largely passed on to the power prices. So electricity generators did increase the power prices, reflecting the carbon costs. In principle, this is the objective of an emissions trading system. It, however, implies that they were double benefiting. They could increase the price at which they sell the electricity, and at the same time, they got the free allowances, and therefore their profitability increased significantly in this period. This was very critical in the public debate, and only the overall strong momentum for carbon pricing, for climate policy, ensured that this overall system was maintained. And given that in Europe it is very difficult to make political adjustments to European frameworks, it takes a long time, it was maintained until in 2012 we moved to full auctioning of allowances to the power sector to avoid this windfall profits from double benefiting free allocation and passing on the price. Now, Professor Arimura already referred to this question. Is it the allocation, if it's output based, if for every megawatt hour, when you produce the megawatt hour, then you get the certificate, this reduces or even eliminates this carbon cost pass through. However, as I understand it right now, the allocation is based on the reference period 2023 to 2025, which is similar to what we have done at that period. Third part, and this is probably the basis of my academic career, the most publications I've ever referenced were on free allocation and the distortions that come from them. So the purpose of emissions trading is illustrated in this picture here, is to ensure that the costs of emissions are reflected in the production cost of different technologies. And it's just simplified. Obviously, you need to add renewables, or in Japan, also nuclear, to such a picture. And therefore, the carbon pricing gives the incentive to shift the technologies, shift from carbon-intensive coal to less intensive coal, to gas power stations, or to low-carbon power generation, or even to saving electricity or saving materials. And in our days, this has become in Europe a very strong argument, because we are very concerned about resilience, about our dependency on value chains. So energy savings and shifting to clean technologies which are more domestic is seen to be an important part. So carbon pricing can create the business case, can create the credibility of this business case going forward. However, as you have in your system, we also made the allocation dependent on production volumes in earlier years. And you can look here, different countries had different reference periods for the production allocation. If you do this, and you use a uniform updating, so every sector, as I think it is envisaged in Japan and after 2033, has the same benchmark, then all the power generation production costs increase by a certain share less, and therefore you reduce the incentives to shift to the clean technologies. If one has fuel-specific benchmarks, then the motivation to shift between technologies is partially muted because the more carbon-intensive coal power stations get more allocation than the gas power stations. I think all of this is in this discussion already. I just reflect and repeat what we've learned in Europe, which I think is to some extent guiding many of the things that I've listened to earlier on today as well. And therefore, the big motivation to not use emissions in the historic reference period, because then one can even reduce the incentives to remove emissions. Improve efficiency of existing assets. Now, you see a slight discrepancy in this analysis here and what I've said about windfall profits beforehand. There's always this trade-off, and I think it is almost a subjective trade-off, how much of allocation is based on very historic reference periods. It's not linked to the output. Then it's a lump sum allocation. Then one does not observe these effects. And how much is it linked to production today, or how much do firms believe future allocation will determine based on today's production? And then this picture is capturing the effect. So the reality is probably in between for different sectors. Final point on free allocation. I'm very happy that in Japan to see that the ETS directly covers also the industrial sector. My sense in Europe is emissions trading is an important part for power and for industry. I'm not so convinced about the importance it has for the building sector and the transport sector. But in the industry sector, 2/3 of our industrial emissions are basic material production. It's 1/3 of global emissions from basic material production. So that's where probably climate action matters a lot, where carbon pricing can be a core component. If firms have to pay for their emissions, they have an incentive to improve efficiency of steel production. However, my sense is basic material producers are pretty efficient today already. So with the conventional production technologies, there's not that much change. So it's a lot about ensuring conventional production bears the cost of carbon, such that clean production, clean steel production, clean ammonia production, clean organic chemistry production can benefit clean paper production and can come into the market, has a business case to go forward. If carbon costs are reflected in steel prices, organic chemistry prices, cement prices, it gives manufacturing and construction industry then the motivation to be more efficient with the materials, to be innovative about how to substitute different materials. So the resource efficiency as a core component of our strategy now in a world where resilience has become so important can very much be supported by effective carbon pricing. And as was indicated, obviously we all live in a global world, and I would have loved to be with you in Japan today. I was still 20 years ago discussing emissions trading aspects and experiences from Europe. But this trade implies that if other parts of the world don't price carbon, and I think this analysis was shown already by Professor Arimura, then this implies in other regions of the world, commodity prices don't increase, and we don't want to kind of create carbon leakage, a relocation of production rather than a reduction of emission reductions. Therefore, also in Europe, we want to reduce it, but continue at the moment free allocation to basic material production, steel, cement, organic chemistry. This allocation is based on benchmarks. It is based on increasing in reference periods, but with the activity levels or linked to today's production volumes stronger than in the past. This implies that the carbon price is not reflected in our steel prices that are globally traded in the cement prices, which unfortunately implies that the carbon pricing system can mute the incentives for clean production, can mute the incentives for resource efficiency material choices. For this reason, we now also grant free allocation to clean material producers such that they can compete in the space with conventional producers. This free allocation is, to some extent, an Achilles heel, the difficulty of the system. And for this reason, you see the discussion of how can we instead find a way of making sure the carbon costs are reflected in the product prices, in the steel prices, along the value chain, such that ultimately also the incremental cost, they are not much, but the incremental cost of clean materials are passed to the economy, because steel producers cannot pay for the incremental cost of clean steel production. At the level of the economy, it's 0.2% of costs. We can afford to do this in Europe. And I hope you will do the same, because I think we hopefully can work on this jointly in the future as well. So this is why this discussion CBAM is important, and how to implement it such that it does address carbon leakage, while most importantly, creating the opportunity to decarbonize the industrial sector is important. Now, I don't have a watch in front of me. I would have this last slide. Can I talk 2 more minutes, or should I conclude now? Sorry for this.
You can go on.
Okay, then the big picture, how we started in Europe was we have climate objectives and want to reduce the emissions. And the European emissions trading system in 2005 really was the flagship environmental policy instrument, which all the debates and everything focused on. So actually, the emissions trading system was more than an economic instrument. It was also a political commitment. And I think this is what you see listening to Europeans going to the world, that we feel this ETS, this is our way of doing climate policy, and that this is our mission about doing climate policy. To some extent, policy instruments are giving strategic guidance to firms. And I think this is interesting. It's one of the only instruments, I think, where a target is reflected in the instrument directly, almost autonomously integrated, which in Europe with our many countries is important because we have more difficult to fine-tune instruments. We have directives which take years to agree in a European process. We then, however, found by itself, it will not help us on this transition part. We do need new technologies, renewables, clean materials, circularity. We need to retrofit buildings. There's a lot of other measures that are needed to reduce the emissions, which are not unlocked by the emissions trading system by itself. The ETS gives strategic guidance to firms. Hey, you have to go into this space. And in the biggest debate on ETS, which we had in 2007 for the second phase in the European Parliament, it was precisely this ETS experience. All the debate, all the lobby concerns were on ETS. And the second big directive at the time, the Renewables Directive, was supported by everyone because it was clear we want to reduce the emissions. Well, everyone was kind of fighting a bit. Do I keep it? Do I not? And in the background of this, the bigger and more important directive at the end, the Renewables Directive, passed through because it was clear to all firms, if we can't run coal anymore, then we need renewables, and we want to have a business case for renewables. So the overall emissions target actually is broken down now in targets for technologies, for clean renewables. I think we will get more clear on clean materials, on circularity is a very strong activity, and buildings and so on. And these additional objectives are actually reflected then also political objectives. We want industrial development, we want resilience of our value chains, we want employment, and we want to address inequality, fuel poverty. And some of these targets, transitional targets, modernization targets, are perhaps more clearly linked to some of the political objectives behind this. And we are now implementing and have implemented for the 2 decades, and I think you have similarly different targeted instruments to achieve these other policy objectives. And for a long time, we had debates in Europe. Is it ETS or the other policy instruments? Will other policy instruments undermine the carbon price under ETS? I think by now it has become clear that this is a part of a portfolio of instruments. The ETS can give long-term strategic guidance. It can help financing incremental cost in basic materials, but it needs complementing instruments like investment frameworks for renewables, like circularity standards, product standards for circularity. So it is part of the policy package, and understanding this and kind of getting this better reflected in the policy process has been one of the core developments in Europe over the last decade. So ETS as part of the bigger picture. I'm very much looking forward to the discussion on this, and we'll summarize top down or bottom up. I think we've made this painful experience that bottom up target setting resulted in over allocation, in lack of scarcity, in a lot of uncertainty for the system. Price stability has been a persistent issue, and auctioning with a price floor, as in many other parts of the world, I think is quite a clever strategy to address part of it. The effects of free allocation we've discussed. I think if there's free allocation based on some level of historic reference period in the power sector, there's big risks of windfall profits. Benchmarks, as very strongly reflected in this Japanese part, are probably improving the situation. But overall, the benchmark free allocation also retains to have big issues, particularly if we talk about modernization of industry, circularity, resilience of our systems. And most important for me now, we have to understand how ETS is part of a policy package to give a consistent picture. I'm very much looking forward to learn more about this, hopefully sometime soon in Japan as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. So over about 20 years already, and based on a very long experience, you talked about painful experience. So there are many things that can be understood, for example, pricing, allocation, and also ETS per se. So what will be the positioning in playing its role in carbon neutrality? So these are the various hints for the discussion going forward. So we hope to talk about this later within our discussion. Thank you very much. Next, from Japan. There's been long experience here as well. So before the national government, in the Tokyo Metropolitan Government has started the ETS system, and Saitama Prefecture followed. So within the Tokyo Metropolitan Government, the cap and trade program, I would like to ask Tsubakino-san to introduce this. Tsubakino from Tokyo Metropolitan Government, thank you very much. I would like to talk about Tokyo Cap and Trade program and also the actual performance. So Tokyo Metropolitan Government, so to achieve net zero by 2050, we are targeting carbon half, and we have come up with a zero emissions Tokyo strategy. In March of last year, there was an updated version. By 2035. GHG compared to 2000 need to be reduced by 60%. That is the new target, so that we will be doing something effective. The left-hand side, the pie graph shows Tokyo's CO2 emissions, and the breakdown by sector is shown. So it's quite unique. It's quite different from the national government. About 70% are from buildings. So not much from industrial division. It's mainly buildings. So measures concerning buildings will be required. And right-hand side pie chart shows, especially in the industrial commercial sectors, the breakdown of the CO2 emission is shown by size. So SMEs, about 630,000, very high. And about 40% of the emissions are from the 1,200 large facilities. So within the Tokyo Metropolitan Government's system, buildings and mainly large facilities are the target for our measures. And the development, in 2002, we started from the mandatory emission reporting system. So to large facilities, CO2 emission and reduction plan were obligated. And they were voluntary, but this was based on voluntary measures as well. So there was a limit to the emissions, and it transitioned into a mandatory reporting system. So with this mandatory reduction program, we were able to urge for more investment in energy saving and also consensus amongst the relevant parties, as well as in buildings. Huge reduction was implemented, and these were the main objectives. So according to this reporting system, based on the accumulated data, the laws and ordinances were revised in Tokyo, and so the Tokyo cap and trade system began. Not only factories, but commercial buildings and office buildings are targeted as well. So this is the first urban type cap and trade system in the world. 1,500 kiloliters or more of crude oil equivalent. And of about 1,000 facilities are either office and commercial buildings, and the remaining 200 are factories or water supply sewage facilities. This is a flow chart. It shows 3 steps, and comparison is shown. So initially, when we started this, the mandatory report reduction system was the first. There were some uncertainties, and through data collection and disclosure, it took some time until we were able to get the understanding. Currently, this has grown throughout the world, and the social demand has gone up as well. So now we are able to implement this with a very short preparation time. So this is the outline of the program here. Office buildings, hospitals, universities, 1,500 kiloliter or more of energy equivalent to crude oil. The facilities that use that will be the covered facilities. Base year emission is calculated based on the average of emissions of selected 3 consecutive fiscal years from the past. The reduction period is set at 5 years. So every time the plans are renewed, the reduction obligation limit has gone up. Now from 2025 to 2029, we are in the 4th period. For office buildings, the mandatory reduction is 50%, and factories 48%, and the allocation is 100% free allocation. The owners of the buildings are responsible. So there will be verification by third parties, and the emissions need to be reported to the metropolitan government. Next is to ensure the effectiveness of the program. So after the planned period is over, the 5-year reduction is established. And if there is shortage of emission, then trading will be used. So by the end of the period, if the obligation is not met, then 1.3 times of credit compared to the shortfall will need to be reduced. And if this order is violated, then there may be fines or disclosure of violations imposed. We're in the 4th period plan right now for net zero. In order to expand the system, there's been some revision. The reduction obligation rate has gone up, and the measures to achieve that have also been expanded. So calculation of the emission, power, and heat will be changed from the fixed to actual emission factors. And for energy saving, on-site renewable energy plus off-site renewable energy usage, and a production of power with low emission factors, and also renewable energy certificates will be utilized for the annual calculation of the reductions. Next is these are the incentives to urge the companies to take measures. So for outstanding energy saving efforts, at 3 levels, they will be designated as top level facilities, which is designated by the governor. So if they're able to achieve this, they can remove the upper limit on excess emission reduction. 5%, meaning 62 facilities were designated as top level facilities last year. There is another incentive. This is for tenants. The reduction obligation responsibilities on the owner, so the relationship between owner and tenants can become a bottleneck for reduction. Under Tokyo's system, the tenants are obligated to cooperate with the owner for a reduction. And tenants who take proactive measures will be recognized, and they are disclosed on the webpage. Next, this is the energy saving chart. In Tokyo, the GHG emission reduction plan and checklist are submitted by covered facilities, and the government analyzes and calculates data, and annual energy savings chart is included to show the CO2 emission and energy consumption intensity. And these charts are fed back to the facilities. The facilities, by reporting, can compare with the status with initiatives at other facilities in the same usage or industry, and this can promote more reduction measures. And this slide shows the reductions achieved. Until now, reduction has been progressing, and by 2024, 27% is the obligation, but we exceeded that. 31% reduction has been made. And as you can see in the pie chart, many facilities have fulfilled their reduction obligation through their own measures. For example, in the middle, phase 2 graph, about 85% of the facilities met the obligations on their own without trading. And right-hand side, the third compliance period, if you look at this graph as well, there's been some reduction because the limit has gone up, but 78% will be able to comply without trading. And these are the summary of measures for reduction by the facilities. There are various measures underway, mainly installation of high efficiency and also operational measures. So we are inducing capex, and even now over years, these measures are still being promoted. And this shows the ETS. The buyer and seller, without going through the market, can directly negotiate. So this is bilateral trading, and therefore the prices here are based on interviews. Excess emission reductions, most facilities have been able to achieve their targets already, so the prices are quite low. And concerning the renewable energy credits, these is heightened interest and investment in renewable energy, so these prices remain quite high for some years. And the actual track record is that 23 million tons of credit have been issued, and in terms of transactions, about 600 cases. In total, about 2.4 million tons of CO2 have been traded. And lastly, so how to coordinate with the national government's GX-ETS. So when GX-ETS starts, and then there will be facilities where there will be an overlap of the Tokyo cap and trade system. So as you can see, of the emissions by the coverage facility, there will be, so in 2025 December, we deregulated the TMG's laws to exclude the scope 1 from the overlap. And the impact from the government system is on the right-hand side. So, of the 1,200 covered facilities covered in Tokyo, about 100 it will shift to the government-regulated facilities. So that is all for the cap and trade and the update from Tokyo. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You just introduced the system in Tokyo. And can you show the last slide again? GX-ETS, the one prior to that, GX-ETS is basically targets companies which has energy intensive consumers, and the power sector is also included for scope 1, but Tokyo is full of buildings, so including headquarters of such industries, and by building and by workplace there were cap rate imposed. But for those companies who will be under GX-ETS, scope 1 is removed. So in total, the number is limited. But for example, the companies which will be covered, and scope 1 is if that is eliminated, then the company will have the possibility of reducing, not in scope 1 but in others, because there will be scope 1 cap. And for those companies, there will be loose coverage in Tokyo. Am I correct to assume in that way? Yes. We have introduced a system, and we are also concerned about that system. And now we are going to have the fourth period, but basically now it is reaching 48%, and that part is scope 1, but that will become the subject of the national law. So more than the ordinance, law is a superior in a sense, so that is not a negotiable, but with that, the efforts by the offices should not loosen, and against the government, we are taking opportunities to offer public comments, and the efforts by the municipalities are to be included by the national design. But as for the reduction obligation, it will be removed from the metropolitan government. But on the other hand, for the report obligation, including scope 1 and scope 2, that is retained in the Tokyo metropolitan government. So the report will include the plan for reduction and the emission, and by submitting that to the Tokyo metropolitan government, scope 1 effort is something we would like to continue to watch. So that is the same for Saitama as well. And so thank you very much for clarifying that point.
So thank you very much. The Tokyo Metropolitan Government and also EU systems were explained. Now in the remaining time, we would like to entertain questions from the audience and have a discussion amongst the panelists as well. So first, Arimura-san, based on the system that is already in place, so what would be the lessons for the Japanese GX-ETS? If you have any comments, please. And if you have any comments concerning my presentation, that will also be very welcome. Arimura speaking, and thank you all very much for your presentations. And Professor Neuhoff, it was very informative, thank you. So first, I would like to ask, Hirata-san talked about GX-ETS, and she demonstrated some questions, so I would like to add some comments. So first of all, concerning the relationship with NDC in phase 2, it's true that was not discussed at the committee, but when the GX law was revised, it said that there's a mandate that the relationship with NDC will need to be reviewed going forward. So at some point in time, there will be confirmation. It's not clear when that is going to be, though. So I just wanted to add that point. Plus, phase 2, phase 3, when is it going to be updated? That was mentioned. Within the committee as well, there are voices saying that it should be updated as quickly as possible, but still, creating the system was very cumbersome. It was very difficult, and there are so many rules that are not yet decided now. So next fiscal year, meaning from April, I'm sure the outstanding measures will need to be discussed and implemented. But the current system is until 2030, and in 2030 it will be updated. So I think that was the consensus within the committee. 2028, 2029, we should discuss what to do from 2030. I think that will be the course of discussions. So decarbonization policy or climate policy, that will be extremely important for that. if I can continue. And concerning Tokyo cap and trade, Tsubakino-san explained. At some time, I was one of the committee members for that, and collecting data and economic data analysis verification was done. So one thing that was made clear at that time is that ETS was not all that effective. It was just, people said that maybe it was because of the increase in power price. But statistically speaking, it was due to power price increase, but there was reduction effect as well. So that is why it should be introduced in Japan. So that was an academic stance that we were able to retain. And the other is, as mentioned earlier, innovation. So there's a possibility that through innovation, technology is being permeated, and that is positive for the economy as well. But the challenges, the trading is not being done that much. When you design the system, there was criticism saying that ETS was a money game, and that was generally accepted. So this became a unique system. But in GX-ETS, so we want to learn from that and update it so financial institutions will be involved, so trading will be urged. So I think that was one major lesson learned from Tokyo Metropolitan Government's experience. And EU ETS, Professor Neuhoff said earlier, at the initial start, allocation was difficult, and we experienced the same thing in GX-ETS. And price. Well, how the price is going to be, that's was not controlled well. So in Japan, we have set the upper price and lower price to try to eliminate uncertainty. So that may be a difference. And one major difference was in EU ETS. It is the climate policy in the EU. So it is EU climate policy. But in Japan, in terms of energy, there are various multiple policies implemented. So it is ETS is just one of them. That seems to be the positioning. At our committee, for example, the certificate concerning this, there were people saying that maybe we should consolidate all of that in ETS, and there were such similar opinions from the industry as well. But the government has decided that it will all be different. All of these policies will run in parallel. So that may be one big difference.
That is all. Thank you. We are now receiving questions through Slido, and the relationship with the NDC related question has the most likes, and it was also mentioned there. This will start in 2026, but the exchange will be established sometime ahead, and there will be allocation and to do the evaluation after 2027. And when are we going to find out that how this compares to NDC? Will it be sometime ahead? During 2026, the initial allocation will be made, and the cap under this system will become clearer at that stage. So maybe we will not be able to see that at the very beginning, but whether there will be supplementary decision at that time or not. Thank you very much. And I would also like to hear from the other speakers. And on the stage from Climate Integrate, we have corporate analyst Ms. Manabe, and she does the analysis of the companies. And a while ago in Climate Integrate, there was a report to evaluate the Japanese companies, and analysis was made. Looking at the initiatives of the Japanese companies, GX-ETS, what do you think can be contributed? Yes, thank you. Yes, let me respond in English because
So the main
I
findings
was
of the report,
raised in Germany.
of the assessment of the 10 Japanese major companies were basically that although all of them have 2050 net zero or carbon neutrality targets, they are not on track for a 1.5 degree pathway. And many companies still lack clear short and medium term reduction plans, and they often rely on future technologies as well as carbon offsets. And in principle, that's where an ETS could play a role, but also taking account all the risks maybe that were flagged earlier today on free allowances or offsets and the setting of carbon prices. In its current setup, it might be uncertain what the impacts could be on corporate behavior. And so if GX-ETS or those rules around it will become more stringent, then it might be an important policy tool, I think, within the set of the other tools to accelerate corporate decarbonization.
So we still need to look going forward. So I would like to ask another question to the speakers. There are important points, but in order to function, ETS, which part do you think should be retained, and which is the most important part? So can you highlight the important points, especially, is there anything that you would like to highlight, especially in Europe, and also learning from the experience in Tokyo? There could be possibilities, and maybe it is difficult to comment on the Japanese system from Professor Neuhoff, but if there is anything that you can comment, can you mention? But can we start from Mr. Tsubakino first? Yes, on GHG reduction, in order to ensure that the system should function appropriately, and so we need to have fairness, and we need to have the mechanism to drive behavioral change. The cap and trade system in Tokyo has the cap clearly for emission, and by mandating this, we are going to guarantee the certainty, and including the third-party verification, we will do the verification in order to enhance the credibility of the system. Furthermore, looking from the different perspective, renewable and energy conservation are introduced, and those are the basics, and through emission trading, we are trying to have the fulfillment of the obligations against the workplaces. Emission submission is not only what we are asking to submit, but from the government side, we will have the initiative to evaluate, and also we will have data which will serve as a reference for emission reduction. And by returning that to the companies, we can have an interactive system. And through that, there will be delivered results.
So, Professor Neuhoff, do you have anything to say?
Sorry, yes. So a few things. I think if I look at the discussions now in Europe, the ETS has become as much an industrial and energy policy instrument as it is a climate burden sharing part. And it is now very much, now this was what we learned, I think you're far ahead of us, part of a policy package. It is only one element of many instruments coming together. This was longly disputed by economists that love one instrument, but I think now it's largely understood that we need this complementarity. And I feel for us always the Tokyo emissions trading system was a very prominent example to show how it's not only the price effect, but many other elements that matter in our policy regime to guide people to support our population. We see now three parts. One is in power sector. We have now 60% of electricity from renewables, a lot of wind and solar. and we need to get a lot more flexibility in the system, storage, not only batteries, but heat storage and others, such that at times, if you have a lot of wind and solar, we can translate it to the other periods. And this is where carbon pricing helps, because in the periods when there is insufficient zero carbon electricity, the prices go up, and this makes storage flexibility more valuable and allows us therefore to move away from fossil fuel imports. We've made a lot of steps, but we are now still very much exposed to the LNG prices, and perhaps somewhere else we can discuss how to cooperate on this LNG global crisis that is just upcoming right now. If you go to industry, it's interesting for me to see how strong the support for ETS has become. So there is full auctioning now in the power sector, and the power companies like ETS because they need it as an investment framework. In the other industrial sectors, we have a commitment to move towards auctioning with the CBAM. And also there's a commitment by heavy industry because they realize ETS provides the revenue you need to pay for the higher costs of clean steel, clean aluminum, clean basic material production. And so part one discussion is the CBAM, how to formulate it. What I think is established is that we need carbon contracts for differences or similar instruments for investors that translate this spot carbon price into a long-term revenue for the savings you deliver with this. So it's an anchor point, and I stop here.
And thank you very much. So within the power sector, I think the strong message is that ETS is part of a package. So it's not going to solve everything. So we need a combination of various different policies. Well, thank you very much for once again stressing that. And there have been other questions from Slido. There are some questions that have many likes. GX-ETS, what will be the impact of that to the renewable price? Any qualitative analysis? Sorry, quantitative analysis. So, Professor Arimura. I can't come up with the numbers off the top of my head, but 1,700 to 4,300 yen per ton, so kilowatt hour. How much is it? I think other people can calculate immediately. I can't. But anyway, it's not that large. But a very small difference will increase the competitiveness of renewables, but not drastically changing the industry all at once. That is true. So there is going to be CO2 cost. So renewables without CO2 will relatively become more competitive according to the system. So earlier on, the power sector benchmark is not to make all power sources renewable all at once, but gradually coal will shift to renewable. So renewable power price, rather than having a direct impact on that, I think it will have more impact on the fossil fuel cost, especially coal-fired. It will have an impact there. So I hope I was able to answer your question.
So emission trading is a cap and trade. It was mentioned earlier, and the total amount can be regulated, and that is the benefit. But why wasn't able to gain profit? And since METI is not participating, I have to ask Professor Arimura to respond to this question. Yes, in terms of the climate change policy, I totally agree with you, but I was involved in this discussion, and including those people who are on site, I did research that this will not be introduced in Japan. So the first step is now something we are able to work on, and we are still toddling infant, but we are hoping that this will be developed in Japan going forward. This is my honest feeling. Yes. How should I say? A GX Promotion Act is this really an act to achieve our carbon neutrality? And is GX having the objective of a carbon neutrality, rather the development of industries or a revitalization of economy are the objectives, but this GX and also ETS are incorporated as a part of it? So GHG emission reduction, and in order to commit to this, including the reaching of NDC, now the current status is to achieve this as a bottom-up approach. Well, Professor, you can have different opinion as well. So in Europe, we can understand that this is related to industrial policies. It doesn't have to be just a CO2, and it may become the mechanism of how to move forward with the economy. But a reduction and targets, we need to also try to link them going forward. Now, from that perspective, this is a question to Yuka, who did the analysis of benchmark. So is there anything you can comment from that perspective?
Thank you. So what I found most insightful out of that benchmark analysis was that emissions can actually increase, like in the case of JERA that was presented earlier, by 2030, obviously under simplified assumptions. But so by the current benchmark design, in certain cases, it doesn't lead to reductions by 2030. So that's maybe the one of the findings that was striking. And because we've spoken about the power sector benchmark quite a lot already, maybe two comments on that would be with a fuel-specific benchmark. First, we saw that there's only little reduction incentive until 2030, but then with a all thermal benchmark being included, then coal power generators will be more, it will be stricter for them to reduce, but less so for companies like JERA that have more LNG because of the emissions intensity difference. And then the one aspect that was also already highlighted is that there is an all thermal benchmark intended or planned, but there's no indication of an all energy where, for example, also renewable energy is included. So maybe there's room for further improvements later. Then one other thing that I think we haven't talked about much yet is that while those benchmarks are designed on or to be applied on installation level, so one coal power plant or one LNG power plant, the compliance is company-wide, so it's on company level. So if I have a company with several different production plants and some other activities, I could, in principle, offset emissions that are that occur somewhere within the company, someplace else. So it's difficult to judge what the actual benchmark, whether that leads to effective reductions or not. So I'd say in general, well, my concern is that while the government is clearly trying to take fairness and competitiveness into account, like weakening the benchmark might not be necessarily the best way to achieve that. And then instead, I would even say that competitiveness might be better supported by maintaining high standards and high and ambitious standards and encourage efficiency improvements and emission reductions. So let's see if in the future we can make that system an effective driver for decarbonization.
So thank you very much. So in Europe, it's by facility, the allocation by facility, but in Japan, it's by company. So I think that was mentioned. No, that's not the point you wanted to comment on. The benchmark this time from 23 to 25, the production volume times the benchmark factor. So the production volume is fixed, and this will continue for 5 years. So growing industries, there will be a cap. But the calculation is that the production volume would not change. That is the assumption. And I think that was the analysis on the power generators. But with data centers and AI, the power demand will go up. And also from from blast to electric, steel mills are changing as well. So depending on that, the cap may have an impact, huge impact. But as Professor Neuhoff mentioned, I think you talked about, there were questions about the transport sector. So this time around, transport will be covered. So for delivery, there's huge delivery demand. And by placing a cap on that, then scope 1 emission, if that is reduced, but for now, that will be sufficient. So introducing EV trucks will be beneficial. And through such efforts, the industry can change and it can all lead to further emission reduction. So there is a possibility for that to happen. That is a positive effect. And there's a question to Professor Neuhoff, 2 questions. In Europe industry, it appears as the competitiveness is coming down. So with ETS, through ETS, the positive contribution, meaning competitiveness by the industry, is that proven? That is the first question. The second question, to please elaborate, in the power sector, price transfer, output-based or power volume-based? I think that was mentioned, but can you elaborate more on that? It was a bit abstract. So those were my 2 questions.
So on the industry sector, so far we have granted for free allocations to steel and some other basic materials. And so effectively they didn't have operation incremental costs. So this was not a factor that impacted the competitiveness. I think what we have an issue in Europe is that we used to have gas imports from Russia and then had the in this crisis since 2022, they were interrupted. We bought LNG in global markets in the spot. And we bought LNG, which usually is traded at 20 euro per megawatt hour, up to 200 euro per megawatt hour. And this tenfold price was passed on to all consumers and to the entire electricity system. Japan had, after Fukushima, developed a far more sophisticated strategy to buy from a portfolio of LNG producers and to index the LNG price to the oil price. And so your LNG price was going from 20 to 30 or 40 euros in this crisis. And so this is the primary part and the dominant part of our energy crisis is the price that we created by the way we imported LNG in the global markets and that we passed this to all consumers. The carbon pricing was very secondary to this. And this is where we are standing right now. And this is where we're standing at the moment, where the Strait of Hormuz is being interrupted again. LNG spot prices are going up again. And this time the oil prices go up as well, and therefore also Japan will have somewhat higher LNG prices, but also like many of our consumers with a delay. So I hope we find an opportunity to cooperate between Japan, Korea, and some other LNG buyers, such that the 20% interruption of LNG that we see right now globally will not trigger another price war, that we compete for this 20%, but that we jointly agree LNG saving targets and say, hey, we don't want to push up these LNG prices. Everyone makes some contribution on LNG import savings, and we moderate the energy price. This would be, I think, very valuable for Europe. I think to some extent also for Japan and for the global economy. So this is the topic we have right now and we have seen over the last 3 years. On the second question relating to the power sector, there we are effectively fully auctioning certificates, so the carbon costs are reflected in power prices, and in periods when coal power is setting the price, this is increasing the wholesale price of electricity. At the same time, I think it was only the emissions targets and the clarity on the emissions targets that encourage governments to implement policies to facilitate financing of renewables, long-term contracts, long-term guarantees for wind and solar investments. And they were the basis that allowed us to kind of get the 60% renewables in the system right now, which has, again, reduced the power prices quite a lot. So there are two effects, the very short term and the investment effect of ETS on the power price.
Thank you very much. And not only ETS, including the competitiveness of the companies. And now we have the situations surrounding Iran, and the energy challenges do include many aspects. Now, on GX-ETS, I would like to pick up more questions as long as the time permits. And is there evaluation for phase 1 already? Until the end of this fiscal year, it is now being done on voluntary basis. We skipped that part, but within our report and also in the 3 appendix, we have a 3 appendix online aside from the official report, and you will find the interim report as well. So please refer to that as well. The target setting and achievement are both voluntary, and the base year is also optional. So it is very difficult to make evaluation, but the NDC equivalent amount, voluntary target or slightly more aspirational, and 50% of the companies are already in the achievement rate. That was found out according to the survey. Of course, we need to look at the past data in order to make the evaluation, but that is known by now. So for the operation of phase 1, Professor Arimura, do you have any comment? Thank you. As a member of the expert panel for designing phase 1, I was involved, but when we discussed phase 2, we did not hear anything about the phase 1 because we were too occupied with the designing of phase 2. This is my honest comment. So purely, I believe this was a difficult process. Yes, thank you for your hard work. Looking at the situation, I don't find any continuity. And there was no target setting and a benchmark. So this is phase 2, and there may be lessons learned. But I don't think there is so much connectivity. I would like to take one more question. Let me see. GX-ETS, we just bombard the questions to Professor Arimura. One more question. You have set the price floor and also ceiling, and until 2030, there is a slight increase, not much increase, but after 31, will there be a drastic increase? Is it anticipated? Now, this is being discussed in the committee, and if the GX transition bond is issued to 20 trillion yen, the general public should repay that. The auction price should reach a certain level, and that part and the price up to 2030, there could be possible gap. And from there and onward, there could be possibility for change. And we did discuss on that. Thank you. Thank you very much for that.
Sorry, we are running out of time. There are many diverse questions going back and forth. But lastly, to the panelists, I would like to ask, and Professor Neuhoff, Arimura-san, and Tsubakino-san as well. So from various perspectives, we talked about the future of GX-ETS and how is it going to be operated. We need to think as we run, but 300 companies, 400 companies, many of these companies did not want emissions trading, but they are going to be involved as well. and these companies that will bear obligations, and all of you focusing on this. So gradually, this is going to become more stringent. The allocations will become more strict. That is already designed in the system, and pricing will go up. We know that. So within this new scheme, companies will need to be involved. So as a company, how should they perceive this? And how should they reflect this onto their corporate activities going forward in terms of decarbonization as well? How should they think of company management? So from a company perspective, any suggestions? So Professor Neuhoff, from EU or EU experience, ETS, maybe not only ETS, but with the introduction of ETS, and there's going to be a cap, there will be pricing. As from the company's perspective, how should they view that?
I think for the companies, if we go back 20 years, very few people were talking about targets in 10 or 20 years ahead. We were in a neoliberal environment where we were talking day to day. And so at that time, already a 10-year target was something people wondered, is it credible or not? And then the ETS gave a legal basis to this credibility. I think to some extent, for me, the most important part, and this is why I'm really impressed by the Japanese development now, is to see that governments nowadays do make bold decisions and make the next step and make a translation of this long-term climate neutrality objective into some tangible policy instruments. From a company perspective, I've seen a lot of firms in Europe that then translate this in terms of what does this mean for my corporate strategy? What do I need to do to find a pathway in this direction? And I think we have now, over the last 2 years, with the argument of resilience, seen all European governments stating, and we want you to make this transition to climate neutrality in Europe as well. So it's the complementarity of this target, which gives a vision for your own strategy and the commitments by government to say, and we want to provide the framework to allow you to make this transition in our region, in a global cooperative approach. I think this is for me the most important signal from what I've observed and learned today. And I was really impressed by your report. Thanks so very much.
So thank you very much, Tsubakino-san, if you have something to say. So Tokyo Metropolitan Government, we have the strength. So we are on site, and when we talk with many companies who need to reduce emissions, the company's advantage is that ever since this started, the reduction of utilities cost have been achieved, we hear. So with this Tokyo's cap and trade system, the average about 30,000 square meters would be the buildings. That would be the average size. So in these buildings, utilities cost would cost about tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of yen per year. And with this, and currently CO2 has been reduced by 31%. So the Tokyo system based on the CO2 and energy, so CO2 and the utilities cost will be about the same, meaning that the companies are enjoying cost reduction, and this is shown every year. So that I think it is very important for the companies to understand that that is an advantage. So there are advantages that are showing fruit.
Professor Arimura, yes, thank you. ETS is a certain country or a certain region, such as Tokyo, in order to reduce the total emission. Totally, we need to seek for efficiency. So those who are easy to reduce, and those who cannot reduce will pay for CO2 in the class of economics for the fresh one. We say that it will be external or in efficient, and many people know that that is true. But when I speak with the companies paying for CO2, reducing CO2 and gain profit, it's not reasonable. I think that is the case at the moment. So going forward, there will be pricing to CO2, and we need to incorporate it in our portfolio and successfully reduce, and if necessary, purchase. And if we purchase, the others are reducing. So totally, this is successful. So once again, pricing to CO2 is something taken for granted. I think that should be recognized. Yes, Manabe-san, you are a corporate analyst, so you will monitor the progress of the companies, but what do you think will be important?
I think for stakeholders like us, but then also other think tanks maybe, to be able to assess, we need transparency. And maybe just to mention a few, one is on methodologies, how the entire GX-ETS, well, if I stay with the benchmarks for now, but then also activity data, allocation data, also like what are the details around the operation of GX-ETS itself, such as where do actually reductions occur and how much is offset, etc. So those are essential. So with that, we would be more better. So now we have to make blunt assumptions sometimes to make calculations and make projections around what could be the impacts that the GX-ETS might have on companies and their pathways. But yeah, so for us, I would say transparency would be crucial to also keep on monitoring what the impacts might be.
Yes, transparency is important, and that is extremely crucial to climate change. How would that be effective? And this system, those who do make effort will be supported with the enhancement of the transparency. They may not need to pay for carbon price, and economically this should be encouraged. And with transparency and with visibility, the companies are accelerating the process, and if it becomes clear, the investors will evaluate such companies, and there will be more circulation on the financial side to create such economic system. So from our perspective, it seems like a system to squeeze from the companies, but in order to emit CO2, now we have the mechanism to pay the price. And by having this built in to the economic system, the companies will promote efficiency in energy and reduce dependence to fossil fuel, become more resilient, and the products which would be circulated can be obtained by us. And as a result, we can see the overall reduction in emission and also decarbonization. This will also involve supply chain and the consumers of the products like us, and this is relevant to all of us. So to us, this kind of a major mechanism will be in operation. So I'm just trying to conclude. We have the situation in Iran, and to be dependent on a fossil fuel is a vulnerability for the company. So you might wonder why we are discussing GX-ETS. You might have that kind of discussion, but we need to seek efficiency, and we need to create a resilient structure. This may be extremely important. That is my view. So any word from each speaker, or are you all right? Mr. Tsubakino from Tokyo, you're trying to make effort from now. So can we have one message going forward from you?
from Tokyo Metropolitan Government. So we are going to move on to phase 4 planning period. So new 5-year period has begun. But the next planning period will come immediately. We need to be mindful of that. And we are starting our studies because in Tokyo already with data centers, and there's going to be increase in demand for power. So we need to use all policies available to contribute to reduction of CO2. We will like to continue to make efforts. So thank you very much. Tokyo Metropolitan Government will be leading, and that will be very important for Japan overall. So I hope that you will make further efforts for further reduction. Professor Neuhoff, any last words for the Japanese audience? Any message, please?
I wish you very good luck at this exciting pathway. Now, I think it is important to get many of the details right. But what I've learned in Europe, when we looked back at the first 10 years, for example, but was just as important to show what is the big objective and to really focus and keep this in mind, because this is what many corporate decisions on investments will be guided by as well. And so it's, I think, this combination of detail and the bigger picture, which makes it an exciting but really important topic as well. Good luck.
Thank you very much for GX-ETS. We hope that you will analyze this further so that we can have further discussion on the system overall. So, Professor Arimura. So right now, GX-ETS, if we look at this point in time, people may have various questions, but there's been long discussion until now. So from that perspective, we've been able to really achieve this thus far. We are still like toddlers, but I hope that you will warmly and strictly cooperate with us so that this can develop further. And I would like to do the same. Thank you. Oh, Japan, good or bad? Once we create something, it's very difficult to abolish. So even if we say we don't like GX-ETS, it's not going to disappear. So how do we do this? How do we make this function? We need the cooperation and support of many people and the interest of many different people. That will be extremely important. There are many issues and challenges even from the start. We're the last runner, but we're starting so slowly. There are many challenges, but so how do we do what going forward? I'm sure you were able to gain hints from the discussions today. So in your respective places, inclusive of companies who will be utilizing this system, let us all cooperate to make this a good system. And the major political objective is that we need to contribute to that as well. And Climate Integrate through analysis and reporting would like to continue to cooperate. So with this, we would like to end today's panel discussion. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. Once again, to the speakers, Professor Karsten Neuhoff, Mr. Takafumi Tsubakino, Professor Toshihide Arimura, and to Ms. Manabe, please have a round of applause. Thank you very much. So please return to your seats. How did you find today's discussion? We had started out from what's GX-ETS, and we had a live discussion on various points of argument. Going forward, the companies would have different positions, and how would they behave, and how would GX-ETS be positioned, value chain stakeholders, impact to society and the climate. We have been able to find many points of discussion. We hope that this is going to be a positive start. At Climate Integrate, we will continue to have a research analysis and plans related to climate and energy policies. Please follow website and X for the future activities. Last but not least, we would appreciate your cooperation to the survey for this seminar. For those of you who are on site, please scan the QR code on the screen or in front of you. We will appreciate your comment, opinions, and message to the symposium, and we would like to take into consideration. For those of you who are online, if you exit from Zoom, you will move to survey. You may also use this QR code as well. We will appreciate your impressions and comments. For those of you who are on site, please leave the interpretation receivers on the tables. With this, we would like to conclude the symposium. For those of you who joined online and on site, thank you very much for your participation.